Most people go through life assuming the economy is just there, like gravity. Invisible, unavoidable, and probably designed by someone much smarter a long time ago. But what if I told you that the economy isn't a law of nature at all? It's man-made. A giant improvised experiment that every country has been tweaking, breaking, and rebuilding for thousands of years. Some nations treat the economy like a competitive arena where the strongest rise to the top. Others design it like a community garden where everyone gets applaud. And a few treat it like a chessboard where every move is planned several turns ahead. The wild part is that all of them insist their system is the best, even though none of them actually solve every problem. Today, we're diving into the world's major economic systems, what they promise, what they deliver, what they break, and why the debate between capitalism and socialism only scratches the surface. Because once you zoom out, you realize we're not just comparing systems, we're comparing philosophies of how humans should live together. So let's start from the beginning. What exactly is an economic system, and why do different societies keep reinventing it? Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the entire world is basically playing different versions of the same strategy game. Everyone has the same pieces: people, land, resources, factories, money. But each country has chosen a completely different set of rules about how these pieces should move. Some play aggressively, some cooperatively, some chaotically, and some haven't figured out what game they're playing at all. And this is where economic systems come in. Because every society, whether it's ancient kingdoms or modern tech nations, has had to answer the same three questions. Who owns what? Who decides what gets produced? And who gets to enjoy the results? The strange part is that humanity never agreed on a single answer. Instead, we created a buffet of systems that range from fiercely competitive to radically cooperative, from market-driven to government-orchestrated, from pragmatic to utopian. So today, we're going to break down the major economic systems: capitalism, socialism, communism, mixed economies, state capitalism, and the historical models that came before them, and explain what they really mean. Not the political shouting match versions. The real functional ideas beneath the noise. And by the end, you'll see that no system is purely good or purely bad. Each one solves a problem, and each one creates a new one. Let's start with capitalism, the economic equivalent of a free roam RPG, where everyone has a character, a skill tree, and a constant sense that someone else has better gear than you. Capitalism begins with a simple idea: people should be free to own private property and use it however they want. If you can afford a factory, it's your factory. If you build a company, it's your company. If you invent something, you get to sell it. The system relies on millions of individuals acting in their own self-interest, buying and selling based on what they value. In theory, prices magically adjust themselves through supply and demand, like an invisible autopilot keeping planes from colliding in midair. And when it works, it's astonishing. Capitalism is explosively creative. It gave us light bulbs, airplanes, antibiotics, smartphones, streaming services, and nearly every innovation you can think of. It encourages ambition, hustle, risk-taking, and constant improvement. But here's the uncomfortable part. Capitalism is also the most effective machine ever created for generating inequality. Because if you let people compete freely, some will win spectacularly, and others will fall through every crack imaginable. Capitalism doesn't guarantee everyone a slice of the pie. It just guarantees that pie exists in the first place. It can create wealth so fast that society occasionally panics about how unevenly distributed it becomes. It also tends to create cycles of booms and crashes, bubbles pop markets, tank recessions hit. Because when you let millions of players run free, they occasionally break the economy by accident. Still, for better or worse, capitalism is the dominant system on Earth today. Most global innovation comes from capitalist incentives. And even the countries that criticize it, the loudest borrow capitalist tools when they need growth. It's messy, high risk, and sometimes harsh, but also dynamic, adaptive, and incredibly efficient. At least when efficiency is the goal. Now let's travel to the opposite side of the map, where socialism sits with a completely different premise. What if the economy were less about competition and more about cooperation? Instead of individuals owning the factories, the land, or the mines, those things belong to the community, which usually means the state acts as the representative of that community. The idea is to reduce the extreme inequalities that capitalism tends to generate by making sure that essential goods like healthcare, education, housing, and basic welfare are accessible to everyone. In a socialist system, you don't ask who can make the most money making this product. Instead, you ask, what does society need, and how do we ensure everyone gets it? It's like choosing co-op mode instead of free-for-all. And it has powerful advantages. Poverty can drop dramatically. People aren't left behind as easily. Society feels more stable and predictable. If capitalism's mantra is opportunity, socialism's mantra is fairness. But socialism has its own issues. When the state owns the major industries, you often lose the competitive energy that drives innovation. Without strong incentives, some workers do the bare minimum. And when government agencies run everything, bureaucracy can expand like mold in a damp basement. Decisions slow down, mistakes multiply, and efficiency starts packing its bags. Modern examples of socialism in soft form include Scandinavia, which mixes market economics with huge social safety nets. In harder form, it appears in countries that push heavy state ownership, central planning, or strict wealth redistribution. The key point is that socialism tries to solve capitalism's inequality problem. But in doing so, it often sacrifices some of capitalism's creativity and speed. Communism takes that idea and pushes it to the extreme. Picture it as the ultimate utopia patch that philosophers never stopped arguing about. In communism, there is no private property at all, at least in theory. Everything belongs to everyone. No classes, no owners, no bosses, no rich, no poor, just a perfectly equal society where people work according to their ability and receive according to their need. It sounds noble. It also sounds impossible to implement without turning society into a command center. And historically, that's exactly what happened. Communist revolutions attempted to erase markets, centralize all decisions under the state, and reshape society from the ground up. But the plan collided with reality. When no one owns anything, no one takes care of anything. When everyone is guaranteed the same reward, no matter how hard they work, effort collapses. And when the state tries to control everything, corruption and authoritarianism follow closely behind. Communism was intended to be a classless paradise, but in practice it often became a rigid, inefficient system where the government held enormous power and the economy stagnated. The dream was symmetry. The result was usually scarcity. That doesn't mean the idea has no philosophical value. It just means the real world stubbornly refuses to behave like the theory. Now, after exploring these extremes, here's a twist most people never hear. Almost no country today uses pure capitalism or pure socialism. The world runs mostly on mixed economies, hybrid builds that borrow elements from both. Think of them as the customizable middle ground free markets for growth government policies for fairness. The United States leans market-heavy, encouraging entrepreneurship and private enterprise, but still having regulations, taxes, and public services. France leans more social with universal healthcare, strong worker protections, and extensive welfare, but still a vibrant private sector. Japan mixes tight regulations with competitive markets. South Korea blends state planning with tech-driven capitalism. Almost every nation is playing a hybrid class, because as it turns out, pure builds just aren't strong enough to handle real-world complexity. Then there's state capitalism, a model that has grown dramatically in the 21st century. This system looks capitalist on the surface: private companies, markets, investments. But behind the scenes, the state acts as a strategic mastermind. China is the clearest example. The government sets national goals, guides key industries, and shapes long-term strategy, while still allowing entrepreneurs and corporations to operate. It's like a market economy, with a director, a scriptwriter, and sometimes a referee who also owns the stadium. Singapore and the UAE use variations of this model too. It can deliver incredible growth when executed well, because the state can align private incentives with national goals. But it also concentrates immense power in the hands of a few, blurring the line between public interest and political interest. Before these modern systems existed, humanity went through a series of older economic worlds. Feudalism, where land was the ultimate currency and a tiny elite controlled almost everything. Mercantilism, where nations hoarded gold like it was the score in a global scoreboard. Slave-based economies, some of the most brutal and exploitative systems ever devised. These historical models weren't just economic choices. They were reflections of power structures, moral beliefs, and limitations of knowledge at the time. Today, we no longer use these systems, but their shadows still shape how countries think about wealth trade and power. They're the old save files of humanity's economic evolution. Now let's put everything side by side. Capitalism excels at innovation, but struggles with inequality. Socialism excels at equality, but struggles with efficiency. Communism promises fairness, but collapses when implemented. Mixed economies try to balance freedom with security. State capitalism aims for strategic growth, but risks centralized control. And historical systems remind us that humanity is constantly experimenting, often painfully, to find the right balance. But here's the real insight: economies aren't moral judgments, they're tools. And different tools solve different problems. A country with abundant resources needs one kind of tool. A country facing poverty needs another. A country with a strong government might succeed with state-directed growth. A country with a dynamic private sector might thrive with market freedom. There is no universal best system, only systems that work for specific places at specific times. The truth is, every economic system is a trade-off. Capitalism trades stability for creativity. Socialism trades speed for fairness. Mixed economies trade ideological purity for practicality. State capitalism trades openness for coordination. And communism trades incentives for equality, which turns out to be the biggest trade-off of all. So the question isn't, which system is right? It's which problems are you trying to solve? And which problems are you willing to tolerate? Because economics isn't about perfection. It's about choosing your battles. In the end, an economy is like a deck of cards. You don't get to choose the cards. You're dealt geography, culture, history, resources. But you do get to choose how to play them. Capitalism, socialism, mixed systems, hybrids. They're all just different strategies for navigating the same game. And the countries that succeed aren't the ones that pick a system and cling to it forever. They're the ones that adapt, experiment, and adjust when the world changes. Because the global economic game never stops evolving. And neither should we. So after all the theories, the promises, the failures, and the grand experiments that shaped our world, what's the takeaway? It's surprisingly simple. There is no perfect system. There is only the system that works well enough for now until something changes. Capitalism pushes humanity forward, but leaves people behind. Socialism protects people, but sometimes slows progress. Mixed economies juggle the chaos in the middle. State capitalism directs from above. And communism, well, it reminds us that good intentions don't always survive contact with reality. But every system has something to teach us. Every model is a reaction to the problems of its time. And every country is still trying to balance freedom, fairness, innovation, and stability. 4 goals that constantly pull in different directions. The real question isn't which system wins. It's which trade-offs a society is willing to accept, and which values it refuses to compromise on. Because at the end of the day, an economic system isn't just a blueprint for making goods. It's a blueprint for how we believe people should live together. And as long as the world keeps changing, technology, politics, climate culture, the economic game will keep evolving too. Maybe the next big system hasn't even been invented yet. But one thing is certain, whatever comes next, it will be shaped by the same forces that shaped every system before it. Human nature, human ambition, and the endless challenge of trying to build a fair and functional world. If you enjoyed this explanation, make sure to stick around for more. Because the world is full of complicated things pretending to be simple, And we're here to unpack all of them, one video at a time.